MRW, up or down, balls up, balls down, POD.
Which side is the sun, man? Are we serving? Wait, which way is that?
Spin the Racket.
Welcome back to Spin the Racket, the recreational tennis pod, covering everything from the Pro Tour to the everyday league player. I'm your boy G.
And I'm Lou.
Today we have Eddie Gonzalez joining us on the pod. Eddie has had a huge impact on tennis in Atlanta and around the country and served as a director of the ATP 250 Atlanta Open from 2013 to 2022. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. The first question that we always ask every guest on the pod, would you rather have no serve or no forehand?
No forehand. Serving is 50% of the game. So you can win a lot of matches with a serve.
That's right.
We've had a pretty split crowd on this, which is interesting. It tells you a little bit about the person, right? But we've had a lot of folks. I think Gerard is on your camp. He answered he'd rather have no forehand. I said I'd rather have no serve. But it's pretty split. People seem to be on.
Well, I'm also left-handed, so the serve is a huge advantage. So it's like a lefty pitcher, you know. It's so without my lefty serve, that's probably one of my bigger strengths because then that helps the rest of my game be better. So I think if any lefty is on the podcast, they're probably going to say the same thing.
That's a no-brainer. Then that's a no-brainer.
I love it. I know you've played tennis. It looks like for a very long time. I know. I think we saw that you played junior tennis and played in college. Like talk to us about your background there. How'd you first get started?
Well, I'm a local boy. I mean, I grew up in Rome, Georgia, and kind of got introduced to tennis at 11. Kind of gave everything else up at 14 or 15 to focus on tennis. And kind of outgrew Rome, Georgia, unfortunately, because I love Rome and Floyd County. That's still, home in a lot of ways. But I was blessed to then be able to go to Baylor School in 10th grade. That is a prep boarding school in Chattanooga with a long history, a great tennis tradition. And I'd say Baylor and Macaulay are the top two high school tennis programs in the country, I would say, and that's not even arguably, I think that's factually, but that helped me a lot, being able to then go away and get academics and athletics, and then was able to get a scholarship to play in the ACC for NC State and the Wolfpack, and had a nice run there. I redshirted 1 year with a shoulder issue, but that allowed me to play an extra year and get 2 degrees, so got a political science and speech communication degree. And then just so I could say I gave my best effort, I went over to Europe and tried to play some pro tennis and was pretty good in D1 college. But on a global stage, I realized I probably needed a plan B. And luckily, I was able to make a career then from there, kind of on the business side of sports. And then the last 10 years, as you mentioned, leading our Atlanta Open team, that nothing but fond memories there and leading the team in our Atlanta ATP Tour event.
I got to say, it was a really good experience. I moved to Atlanta about 3 years ago, and I got to go to the last 2 editions of it. And it's one of the best, let's just say, entertainment places that I've ever been in my life. Obviously, being a tennis fan, like you're going to enjoy tennis, but the fact that the tournament felt so, what's the word? It just felt very intimate. I happen to have I found different places across the tournament that I could sit at and still enjoy it. It was a nice experience for me to be able to, enjoy a tournament like that. And it obviously is going to be missed. I did want to, go into what you said, because we had a guest on the podcast on the previous episode who, just finished D1 tennis and is kind of in that same step of the journey where he's giving it a complete shot to going pro, right? And he had a pretty interesting perspective on this, but what's your perspective on like D1 tennis when you were in college and that transition into like an full ITF, ATP Challengers Tour from when you were to what it is? Do you think it's changed now? Do you think that there's been a change in that transition?
Well, I'll just go back to the Atlanta Open for a minute. Thank you for the nice compliment. I mean, as a team, really our objective there was, our motto was, we want people to come, and we're basically throwing a party and a tennis match breaks out. So that's how we tried to look at it. So that we had
Yeah.
multiple, you didn't even have to be a tennis fan and you had a good time because of the music stage and the bars,
Right.
retail store. And then, our worst seat was 12, 14 rows away from the stadium. So even our worst seats were courtside boxes at any other major.
Mhm.
And intimate is a great word. Atlantic Station, an intimate location, the parking, the restaurants, the shops, and the players loved being able to stay on site at the hotel and literally walk to their matches. And there's no
Yeah.
other venue that had that. And so we didn't lose that tournament because Atlanta wasn't successful. It was that's a separate conversation maybe we could go to later. But to answer your question about D1 tennis, absolutely, it's a lot different. I can tell you that when I played college, again, and I played against some guys that, got to be top 10 in the world. And so playing in the ACC or the SEC or, the Pac-10 back then were just a great stepping stone to play pro tennis. But I can remember our head coach who had played the tour, Crawford Henry, who is in the Southern Tennis Hall of Fame, left it up to us to go to the workout room. That was up to us. And he was a believer that you had to be self-motivated and you didn't need to be told what to do. I think that can be an argument of agree to disagree. I think probably 18 to 22, 23-year-old young men need discipline. And now it's a job. I mean, it is, there's no longer the option of physio and cardio and workout, and there's no such thing as an off season. And so it is a job when you're having to wake up at 6 a.m. to go hit the gym and then go to school and then go to your practice and then go to your warm down afterwards and then go get your labs, in the evening. So, and then on top of that, we got this thing called NIL that has changed every sport in terms of being able to kind of, I think the team ability has gotten a lot tougher when every team has new players every year. But the commitment and the discipline required now to play D1 is so different than when I came up through.
You think that's like lowered the gap, right? Become less of a stepping stone for players, with pro aspirations?
No, because I think I think the quality of the play has actually gotten better. There's and no, I think that we've seen that um Mickelson playing the tour that was really going to go to Georgia. Ethan Quinn, who won the NCAA's, and now he's top. He's right around 100. Brandon Nakashima, who didn't have a good college career, and you look at his numbers, he's top 40 in the world. Jensen Brooksby, who went to Baylor University for one semester. So I think there's enough examples now of they're able to, because look, an 18-year-old young man still has a lot of physical and mental development to do. And I don't think they're ready at 18 unless you're really gifted like Sinner or Alcaraz to travel the world chasing your dream. I think really by the time you get to be 21 or 22, and if you can survive for 3 years on the Challenger Tour doing that, great. Otherwise, I think D1 tennis now has gotten so good with the training, the competition, that it's probably an even better stepping stone for more players than less.
That's why we're seeing that it's becoming, obviously you can't associate it to like, playing D1 tennis. Probably not indicative of, success on tour, but it sounds like it's preparing the young players much better than it was, back in the day, right?
That would be my position. Maybe there's others that disagree, but it's also expensive. You need to travel with a coach and a trainer. And so I think you're better off trying to get 2 or 3 years of education at a college and the tennis, unless you're just gifted. I mean, again, look at Ben Shelton. I mean, so he would be the first to admit he wouldn't have been ready at 18 or 19 years old. And he has such a good pedigree too with his father, by the way, who probably would answer serve over forehand as well. Because Brian had a huge serve and his forehand was his weakness. But Ben Shelton would tell you that college tennis was certainly the right choice for him. And now he's top 10 in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example. And I have to echo what Louise said about the Atlanta Open. I mean, incredible tournament. I moved to Atlanta in 2012 and I went every single year, and it was such a highlight. I actually volunteered for a few years as an usher, met some other friends through that experience
Thank
too.
you. Appreciate it.
And absolutely. And as we talk about this, D1 college tennis, I remember the college tennis night being a core piece of the Atlanta Open too, and having wild cards for local players. Like talk to us about that. Was that something that was intentional because you were trying to support D1 tennis and show how good it is from a leveling perspective?
100%. 100%. I'm a big believer that pro sports can be such a motivation for our youth to dream and to dream big. And I don't care if it's basketball, baseball, football, tennis. And that's why, again, like we would have kids' days where kids could get in for free with a paid adult because we wanted kids to be there and to dream. And whether they are on the ball kids team and they're close to the action, that motivates them to play high school or college or maybe even one day pro. And I think college tennis is a great pathway, and we were the only tournament in the world that was doing a college night in which we gave a wild card to a player from the area, Georgia and Georgia Tech. But you know what? We also gave during my time to Georgia State and Georgia Gwinnett and Kennesaw State. So we supported all the schools in the area because we wanted to help them recruit, use that as a recruiting tool, but we wanted those kids to experience pro tennis. And when I look back, I'm very proud of that because I think that was such a big help for Chris Eubanks. I mean, Chris Eubanks, Georgia Tech, he had a very pedestrian junior career. Got to college, developed some, was having some success. But once he got the wild card into Atlanta, and one year he had a win over Taylor Fritz. And he also had a win over Gerald Donaldson, who was top 50. He got to a quarterfinals before he lost to Ryan Harrison. But I'm very happy for Chris that he took advantage of the opportunity, which is why we did it, so players could dream and dream big. And then he was able to take that and run with it. And so, yes, we believed in college tennis, and that was always a fun night on that Tuesday night.
I love it. And I know, as we talked about earlier in the show, you're someone who's been a part of tennis in many different chapters and different perspectives. I know you worked for the USTA at some point in your career as well. How do you view the impact and importance, or even kind of currently thinking about USTA, Alta, some of these organizations that are promoting tennis and juniors and adults? Like, how do you kind of view their role today to help with the future development of players going forward here?
Well, we're very blessed to live in Atlanta, that people will say is the #1 tennis city in the world. And I've been blessed to travel to a lot of cities around the world. And people will always ask me who play tennis. Hey, Atlanta, we've heard so much about it. Well, we're blessed because we have great weather. And we're blessed because we've got Alta and USTA that allows us to play year round. You play Alta in the spring and the fall, and you play USTA summer, winter. And putting on my, again, tournament director hat with the ATP Tour and the Atlanta Open, the first two people I sat down with when I became the tournament director was Alta and USTA leadership, because pro tennis event in any market will not be successful unless you have the support from the community tennis. Because we wanted folks like you sitting in the stands coming, and if you had a good experience, you're going to tell your friends to come. And because, marketing 101 is word of mouth. And so
That's right.
so we had so much fun and so much great relationships with Alton USTA, and that's why again, I mean, I still play. I still play Alton USTA. So I'm on an
Yep.
Alta team and I still play USTA events. And I think the role in any community has to involve that local community tennis association. Again, my hometown of Rome, Georgia, the Coosa Valley Tennis Association plays a key role in that community. Without it, it's tougher because then you don't have whether it's junior team tennis or National Junior Tennis League or adult leagues. I mean, as a kid, I was playing in adult leagues and, at 12, 13, 14 years old, because it's how I could get matches and the adults were very welcoming to me. So it's pivotal for Alton USTA in Atlanta to continue to offer programs that really provide playing opportunities.
Yeah. Well, we might have to recruit you to our Alta team at some point. We're low on players and can use a big lefty serve like yours.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's this past Saturday was not indicative of like that. I think it was like default 2 lines. The other team like somehow show up with 5 players and then we end up sweeping the other team for some reason. I still can't comprehend, but yeah, it was rough.
This time of year,
odd Saturday.
the fall is a
Now,
little tougher with college football. I can tell you that nobody wants to go head to head with the SEC or the ACC. And here in Atlanta with Georgia and Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia Tech's undefeated this year. And so, yeah, Saturdays get tough to, so across all levels of
yeah. This happened to be also an hour away in Douglasville. So it was, I think we put 2 and 2 together and was like, somehow our availability happens to be a lot slimmer on the weekend that, the match is pretty far away. So, couldn't blame anybody. It did take me an hour to get back, and it was like, Jesus, lost like half of the Saturday, but we did get the dub. So that was nice.
Cool.
Now, obviously, you have a interesting perspective, and I'm curious to hear from you on we talked about the Atlanta Open being this party for you, and at the end of the day, my perspective is that in order to encourage the new generation and to increase the amount of tennis players that we have generation over generation, we have to keep tennis relevant, right? We have to keep the sport fun and entertaining. What are your perspectives on new sort of events that are coming up that are have already come out? The U.S. Open hosted their, sort of like a exhibition style mixed doubles, and then the Australian Open announced this new
1 point,
the 1 point tournament situation. What's your take on that?
I think any industry has to continue to reinvent itself. We don't go around on horse and buggy anymore. So, we have to continue to reinvent ourselves. And I've always been a big proponent for, some people don't like the word disruption or disruptor, but sometimes disruption is good. I mean, when I'm proud of the fact that some things that we did during the Atlanta Open were offering the ATP Tour to be a guinea pig for using the electronic line calling. I thought it was kind of interesting that you got 2 players playing, but you had 7 people on the court calling lines for 2 people, plus the chair umpire. Now look, there's a role for the officials, and officials are needed. But if we have the technology, we need to embrace it. And so, we were an early adapter to that. We showed that it works. We also were an early adapter to using the digital signage around the court. I mean, that's pretty standard at the NBA, but tennis was very traditional about just having that static logo signage. It's like, why would we not have a digital back wall? So we were the first tournament in the United States to actually use digital signage, and proud of the fact that even the U.S. Open kind of followed our suit with that. Now that's cool. Become much more commonplace. But I think that the doubles being a 2 out of 3 with a 10-point match tiebreak on the ATP Tour is a good thing. I think what the U.S. Open did with the mixed doubles is a good thing, I mean the stands were packed. You created content even before the show started, with the main attraction, with the main draw. And so you've been able to expand the footprint for that event. And you look, the Australian Open 1 point challenge may fall flat on its face. We don't know, but you know what? Kudos to them for trying. And so as we relate that to community tennis, we should continue to explore. Maybe there's more junior team events where kind of the boys and the girls are playing together instead of maybe they're struggling in a smaller community to get enough boys or girls to have separate teams and you combine. Use the example of Douglasville. I mean, maybe is there a way that there could have been different scoring, or could both teams agree to play on Sunday instead of Saturday? Again, I'm just kind of throwing some things out, but I'm a big believer, unless you ought to continue to keep trying new things. And what are those new things? Again, we've got this, kind of kudos to this pro endeavor Intense that tried to fill the void of pro tennis this past summer. I think you had JY on earlier, who's a dear friend, and I know he's involved in that. And again, unless we try it, we don't know.
Yep.
Wow, you like read my mind. That was going to be my next question. It's like, obviously you mentioned the resurgence of tennis as a team sport, and we've seen it with events like the Laver Cup that do really well. I was going to ask you what your thought was on Intense being this new thing, right? First, fresh concept.
Again, fresh concept, opportunity to be a disruptor. I'm glad that they're in the marketplace and trying to expand. And so I wish them, a lot of luck. I think the challenge for them is still having players that fans can identify with. I mean, look, with the ATP Tour in Atlanta, we knew that we were never going to get Federer or Nadal or Djokovic. That was a given. We just weren't where we were on the calendar. So we had to really emphasize less about who the players were and more about just the whole experience. Now, we went hard after all the Americans because we wanted Isner and Opelka and Fritz and Tiafoe and we wanted all of them because we were one of the few American events. So I think if there's an opportunity for Intense to try to get some name players that people can identify with, I think that would bode well for them. But I love the energy. I was able to go to, one or two of their events, and it was a great production.
Yeah, I had a chance to go to one this year too, and it was really fun. It was so different, just, I don't know, being out there and hearing people just cheer whenever and blow whistles and yell and stuff. It was like, wait a minute, what's going on? But it made for a really cool atmosphere. I think people enjoyed themselves.
Going back to the Atlanta Open again, you were an usher a couple years. I told our usher team we wanted it to be a compliment if the chair umpire had to say quiet, please. If we wanted people to be, to me, I think it's silly that you can't get up and go to get something to eat or drink or come back to your seat because you have to go to the restroom. We changed that. Right. Unless you're sitting right behind the court, we told our ushers and fans, you can come and go on the sides or on the, above, but right behind play, I get it. So again, small little example of just trying to do what's right. So a better experience. And when you do have a better experience, that's going to help grow your event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, JY made a big emphasis on the ability to bring kids to an event like that, like Intense, where it doesn't have to be you can't hear the drop of a pin because they're playing music and whatnot, and it's a loud environment, and so you're not really going to hear the children playing around and all that stuff, so they can get exposed to what tennis is as an experience earlier on, and you're fostering that in the younger generation. So real good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to, of course, make sure we dig into the Atlanta Open. Very curious to ask you some questions here. You ran it for close to 10 years. Like when you took it over in 2013, like what was your initial vision for the tournament? Like where did you see it going? How did you go about kind of executing on that?
Well, I was blessed in my career, and I was in sports on the sales and marketing side for years, and I was blessed to be able to go to Super Bowls and Final Fours and Pro Bowls and Augusta, the Masters. But I tell people I feel like the greatest annual sporting event is the U.S. Open tennis.
Hmm.
It's a major. It's New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world. It's night matches. It's people watching as restaurants. It's just the whole package. And so, is my vision, and my staff would say that I joke that I always want us to be the mini U.S. Open. I wanted the place to be seen. And, Atlantic State, we had the beautiful skyline, Midtown skyline views, and people watching, and great restaurants and shops
Yep.
and world-class players. And then when we added the women's exhibition on the Sunday night, that would include former U.S. Open champions with Kim Clijsters and Sloane Stephens and Venus Williams, and my last year having Coco Gauff. I mean, so now we really were that many. So my vision was I wanted to be that mini U.S. Open. And, when you're in the middle of it, it's tough to kind of, see through the trees. But now that I'm able to look back on our team, it's nice to know that you left something better than you found it. And that's, I think, what anybody wants to do, in life when you can impact things. You want to just leave it better than you found it. And the team was so dedicated, and, we left it better than we found it. And that's, one, just, again, an example there, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great run.
That's awesome. What kind of took place to get to that point? Like if you can give us a little bit of a history lesson, or kind of, back in that period, in terms of getting the tournament to Atlanta and starting something like this at 250, like do you have an idea of kind of what it took to even get to that point?
Well, our event took place every year on an empty parking lot. And it's that site is used for events like Cirque du Soleil that comes in, or food and wine
Right.
festivals, and we would come in and we'd build this beautiful tennis center. And there were some advantages and disadvantages to that. For this conversation, I would say the advantage was we could learn every year about things about the stadium and what worked and what didn't. Where could we tweak? Could we add seats on one side? We learned to add more seats where the sun was at your back, as the sun was setting. You didn't want to have more seats where you're glaring into the sun trying to watch tennis, and it's already 90 degrees during the day. Also learned to play all your key matches at night, because it was very pleasant in the night. There was a
Very
nice
nice.
breeze that would come through there. And so it's not necessarily one thing, but it was making sure that we made everybody feel like they were the most important. We wanted the players to come in and feel like they are the most important. And when you have great relationships with the players, and the players talk, and they're like, man, Atlanta, the food's great, the practice courts are readily available, plenty of restaurant, they talk. And then, want the volunteers. I mean, again, Gerard, we wanted that volunteer experience to be as good and as fun as possible. And there's certain tournaments that would charge volunteers for the uniforms or for food. We didn't want to do that. So all the volunteers at work got nice uniforms, got food, got the ability to use tickets when they weren't working. And we wanted the officials to come and feel like they were the most important. And then, being from a revenue perspective, you got to make sure your sponsors are, feeling great. And on top of that, your ticket holders. And then we got a lot of money from TV. So we want our broadcast partners to feel us. So I think it was making sure that we tried to make sure everybody felt like they were the most important ones. And if you could do that, then that just kind of trickled down and checked, a lot of the boxes. And so we got pretty good at that.
Yeah. I can
All about
imagine.
the experience. It's all about the experience. What would you say was like your biggest or like most memorable partnership that helped like elevate the event?
Well, from a corporate partnership, I have to put Alton USTA in there, as I mentioned earlier, because if you don't have the support of the local community, uh, you're not going to be successful. And they were all in with us, and we were all in with them. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about BB&T, who was our original title partner that now, bought SunTrust and became
Mhm.
Truist. BB&T had their Georgia headquarters right there at Atlantic Station, and their building
Mhm.
overlooked the venue. And the leadership of BB&T during my time, they were all in, and we were all in with them. This was their flagpole event in our Atlanta market, and they knew tennis was such a common passion point that they would say that, look, we didn't choose tennis chose us. I mean, we
Mhm.
knew it was easy for them. So corporate side, BB&T was such a great partner. And then back to Alton USTA, I mean, we would play one of the division's mixed doubles finals on our site. And so that
Yeah,
way,
I remember
again,
that.
you could be a double A3 player and you get to play the city title on our courts. How cool was that? Or
Mhm.
working with USTA to have a Hispanic coaches workshop there so that we could bring in Hispanic coaches from across the South, use the tennis event for them to enjoy and show appreciation, and then they get to learn from each other and then take that back to their local communities to grow the Hispanic initiative. I mean,
Mhm.
we had a diversity in tennis networking. So we just we did a lot to try to help support the organizations that were supporting us.
Makes a lot of sense. So take us tactically here. So, obviously the tournament was in July. How much time are you putting into planning and logistics and everything up until the tournament starts? Like, is it the start beginning of the year? Do you start 3 months before the tournament? Is it all the time? Like, help us
Yeah, the
understand that.
moment it's over, you're already planning for the next year, kind of thing.
We would start planning the following year, the first day of the tournament from the previous year.
Wow.
Just because, again, you're already learning about things that worked or didn't work. Did the entrance work for security flow coming people in? We don't want people waiting in line. You get one chance to
Mhm.
make a first impression. So
Yep.
we did not want people waiting in line. We wanted everybody, and that was, if we said our gates opened at 6 o'clock, we would try to open up at 5:45, kind of take that Disney approach where you actually open up before, because again, you wanted to just have that good, relaxed, fun first impression. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess yeah. And to that, I mean, is
But so
it
it's a year round. Look, it's year
right?
round. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
we had, because we'd have a media day in June, and then we'd bring in a player in April.
Okay.
We'd have a post-event volunteer appreciation party. We'd have a sponsor
Yep.
retreat in the fall. You got to start your renewals of sponsors, immediately. And who are you entertaining at the tournament? Who you're trying to get to come on board for the next year? So
Hmm.
some people
Hmm.
would joke, Eddie, what do you do the 51 weeks outside of the
Yeah.
tennis tournament? Well, people don't
Right.
understand that and again, you're talking about building a beautiful tennis facility, tennis
Hmm.
stadium, and then tearing it down. And you got to
Yep.
hand it back over to Atlantic Station with that site perfectly clean so that Cirque du Soleil can come in behind us.
Hmm.
So it was a year-round endeavor for sure. And we had year-round offices right there at Atlantic Station. So we were in that Atlantic Station community
Right.
365.
Yeah.
What was the Yeah, I was gonna ask you like what were some of the challenges with the setup, right? Because obviously you mentioned the advantages of being able to reinvent yourself every year as you're, essentially creating a whole new venue from you could create a whole new venue from scratch. What were some challenges that came with that setup?
Well, we could probably spend a whole podcast episode on that, whether it was, having some suites that you find out maybe there was some leakage issues,
Oh
in
my
there.
gosh.
How do you problem solve? And that's what I tell people. It says, look, the week of the tournament, all I'm doing is I'm problem solving, and I'm problem solving fast.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, you learn if you're going to add a VIP area, people like, if you add air conditioning, I will pay for it. And so we added a stadium club with air conditioning. How many tables or seats can you add there to make the math work so that what you're spending on that air conditioning in this new VIP area? And the first year we did it, we're lucky that Cigna, the health insurance company, wanted to put their name on it. So it was a Cigna Stadium Club, and that helped, ease the financial pressure when you had a partner who wanted to put their name on it. It would help cover the cost. And then how many tables could we put in there and selling those for $10,000, a pop for the week? Because that's not a small check, but
Right.
but a company who can use that table all week to entertain folks, that was really, from a lot of their perspective, kind of a small investment. And here they were in air conditioning right behind the court. So that's just one small example. Or do you put the player holding area? I mentioned the security. We learned how to, create the entrance so that it was, because one year it was a debacle at the entrance when I think the first year that we had Venus and Jeannie Bouchard play because there was an issue right off the interstate. So traffic got backed up and then everybody kind of was arriving at the same time. So you just learn on those things and you make improvements and enhancements and you move on.
Yeah, I can imagine just week of you probably run around like your hair's on fire and everything. Sounds a little
I'm
stressful.
glad I don't wear one of those Whoops or Apple Watches because I know I was putting probably 30,000 steps on a day. And I tried to eat as much as I could because I would, stay hydrated and stay nourished.
Yeah, you feel like you were phasing through walls, just moving so quick. Where's Eddie? I don't know.
Yeah.
He was just here a second ago.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, what's it like to get some of the players there? I know you mentioned obviously wanting some of the top American players every year. I remember like Nick Kyrgios playing most years in the tournament. Like is it you creating a great experience to them where they want to just come back? Is it, also paying like appearance fees? Like how does that work in terms of getting some of the top players to show up?
Well, Nick's a good example because Nick is still to this day a well-known commodity in tennis. And if and when he plays, he's usually the feature match at night just because and tennis needs people like him that are polarizing. He's the New York Yankees or the New England Patriot. You either love him or you hate him,
Exactly.
And so, but he's great for the sport and he was great for Atlanta. And Nick and I had and have a wonderful relationship. And Nick, out of all the years he played, we never paid him an appearance fee because money wasn't important to him. It was more about being comfortable. And again, going back to Luis, you're intimate. He loved the intimacy. He loved how everything was so easy here. And the best story for Nick is that, the year he lost in the finals of Wimbledon to Djokovic, he was scheduled to come to Atlanta. And usually if you go deep at Wimbledon, your body needs to rest and you pull out of Atlanta or DC or whatever the next event is. And that's just, we accepted that. We get it. Well, Nick got to the finals of Wimbledon and he came to Atlanta. Now, he ended up having to pull out of the singles that year because he still was having some knee issues that were legit. And he came to me distraught, telling me that he was going to pull out. And I said, Nick, you're good. We're good. And I said, because you have more to accomplish in tennis in Atlanta. You've got other majors and what have you. And I said, so hopefully you're back next year. He says, well, I'm going to wait to see if my physio tells me I'm okay to play doubles. I'll know tomorrow. Okay. Well, he played doubles and he and Kokkinakis won the doubles.
I was at that final. That's the match that got I would say that's the match that got my wife into watching tennis.
Yeah,
that was it.
So it was a great moment that he came after getting the finals of Wimbledon. I mean, John Isner again. John, as great of a tennis player as he is, he's a better human being. And he got to the semifinals of Wimbledon, losing 20-18 in the fifth set to Kevin Anderson. Yet 2.5 weeks later, he's in Atlanta because he loved Atlanta. Now, granted, he won it 6 times, but he was so comfortable. He wanted to, and that's what we were trying to create. It was in a tournament that they didn't need to play, but they wanted to play. And
Mm-hmm.
by going back to those things that I said about just having the hotel and the food and the practice courts and
Yeah.
great restaurants, and we have some great restaurants in Atlanta with some tennis folks, and I'll give a shout out to my friend Farshid at Umi or Marco Betti at Antica Posta when Yannick Sinner came here in 2021 and lost first round in singles.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
he lost to O'Connell from Canada or
Australia, right?
Australia.
Yeah.
And then, but he was signed up to play doubles with Riley Opelka, and Riley is one of the most outspoken critics of doubles on the tour. And
Yeah.
but Riley played doubles with Sinner, and they won the doubles in
No way.
2021. But Yannick Sinner gave a lot of shout out during the award ceremony to Marco Betti, who owns Antica Posta in Buckhead, because he said that was the most authentic Italian restaurant he's ever had outside of Italy. And so
Wow.
having Umi as a great restaurant partner, or Marco and Antica Posta, and again, Yannick Sinner will probably never win another doubles title on tour because he'll probably never play doubles again because he's such a singles guy now. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool that the one doubles tournament he won was with Opelka here in Atlanta.
I can
That is cool.
attest. I can attest to the quality of Antigua Post. I've actually had I think it was a wedding anniversary dinner there. One of my best friends is from Italy, and same thing. He was like, "You need to go to this place. It's legit." And so I took the wife there for a dinner. It is extremely good, and it's
He
very
always
intimate
has
too.
TV. He on the TV. He always has tennis on. He says, "Eddie, tennis doesn't offend anybody." He says, "You can put tennis on, and
Sure.
Everybody's not gonna mind having tennis on." And he selfishly likes to watch tennis. So whenever you
That's
go, if you
perfect.
go sit there, he will have tennis on the TV. I promise you that.
That's hilarious. I didn't notice that.
That's awesome. So I know we talked a lot about other forms of tennis events and spectacles out there. I mean, as you look back at your career and you think about the Atlanta Open, what was the key to, or what is the key rather, to really sustaining a mid-level pro tournament like that in a very crowded market where there's a lot of different sports, a lot of different events to go to? Like what's the key there for success?
I mean, again, we didn't. The secret sauce for us was we had such a great venue partner, Atlantic Station. We're right in the heart of Midtown Atlanta. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you couldn't ask for a better venue. And then, as we talked about earlier, having a corporate partner, BB&T, who just believes in it, and having the support of the community tennis leaders. So that was our secret sauce, having the Alta and USGA support, having such a great venue, and having a title sponsor. And in my retirement now, I still have doing some consulting for other events. And that's really the thing that I encourage is if you can get one of the leading companies, because guess what? If you get one of the leading companies, then the other companies would be like, well, if they're doing it, it's the Me Too thing. Then they want to be a part of it. And
Get the
Mhm.
FOMO, yeah.
BB&T on board that was able to get other companies on board. And then being in a desired location, you don't want to go, an hour to Douglasville. I mean, so it's just, and nothing against Douglasville. I'm just using it as examples. And you talked about having to drive there for tennis, but it was just so
Mhm.
easy. We had the covered parking spaces, and there's so many ways to get in and out of Atlantic Station.
Mhm.
So that's what I would tell any event.
Well, I definitely, felt the void. I was just talking to Luis about that before in terms of this summer not having the tournament around. It was pretty sad not to be able to have that local tennis like we wanted. But as you think about what happened there and why we don't have Atlanta open anymore, I know there's things we could read on ATP about the other tournaments that were upgraded. Like what's kind of the story there? How have you kind of explained it to folks?
We need closure.
Yeah, Atlanta was very successful for all the reasons that I mentioned, and financially as well. Um, but with the ATP Tour being a global sport, ATP leadership really took the perspective that we want to make our bigger tournaments bigger. And by adding Cincinnati and Canada in the summer to a 128 draw, that takes each of those from 9 days to 12. So that's 6 days. So that's a week. So you lose a week.
Yep.
So that squeezed the calendar, and that caused Atlanta and Newport to really be removed from the calendar. And DC had to move up a week, and they were originally and were not happy with that. I think time will tell. I'm a big believer that the 250, almost like college tennis, so we're talking about as a pathway, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, they all had to start at the 250 level. And they can be very successful and very important in the ecosystem of pro tennis. But I think it's going to be very difficult for Atlanta to get an ATP or WTA event back for a while, just because the dates on the calendar. Every date has its challenges. And yes, we had our challenges in July with heat and weather, but it worked. That was a great date. So now you've kind of lost that summer. You're not going to go in the fall, like I said, because of college football. You just can't compete. And look at the Tour Championships out at Eastlake. They moved from September to before Labor Day weekend to get off of college football because they saw their attendance drop. Spring is tough in Atlanta because the weather's actually even more unpredictable.
Yeah.
And when and where are you going to do it? And again, the flip side is you could maybe play where matches are enjoyable during the day, but in the evenings it can get cold and windy and rainy, and there's school, and and it's gonna be tough. There's an exhibition that's coming, December, that I don't know a lot about, but I did, just to give you kind of a life update. I am helping with the one in Madison Square Garden in New York City. So a friend has a relationship there with the garden, and Jerry Solomon, who's a longtime Yvonne Lendl agent and longtime tennis icon, kind of recruited me to help. And I said, you know what, Jerry, for a one-night event in December at Madison Square Garden, I'll do it. And so it's been fun kind of staying involved in tennis, helping with that. We've got world number one Arina Sabalenka playing against four-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka.
Wow, that's
and then
awesome.
then we got Nick Kyrgios playing against Tommy Paul, and so we're happy. And so I think there's a role for exhibitions, I think, for right now. Maybe that can be the stopgap until maybe there's some changes on the calendar again. Maybe we revisit getting back on in the spring. I can give you an update on how the garden event goes, but that's going to be fun because we're partnering with the International Tennis Hall of Fame. That's our charity partner there. Of course, Sharapova and the Bryan brothers just went in this past year. It's probably 99% likely that Roger's going to go in next year, or maybe even with Del Potro. So there's some fun things we can do there. We can help raise money for the International Tennis Hall of Fame. And so that's been fun. So, or maybe a podcast from the garden, December 8th.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Trip.
So help me here. So I did see the advertisement for that event and for the Atlanta exhibition kind of around the same time. Are those two events not related?
No, none of the exhibitions are related, which again, I think and I've kind of voiced my opinion to each of the entities that there should be some alignment. Because you have some efficiencies and economies of scale, but the Atlanta exhibition was announced it's going to be played Saturday night, December 6th. Ours is Monday, December 8th. There's one in Charlotte. Now, these are all different players, and there's different entities organizing them, because that's really the only window on the calendar that frees up the players to do it. And they're looking for matches at that point before they head down under. And that's where I made a conscious effort to reach out to Dunlop as our official ball and racket partner, because Dunlop is the official ball of the Australian Open. And you probably heard there's criticism from players about what ball, they're using different balls every week. So we wanted to have a good reason for these 4 top players in the world to at least have a ball that they're going to be using before they go down under to play in the first major of the year. So just one small example there of trying to be
Consistent.
player friendly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's actually a conversation we had on the first episode of our podcast about the that concern with the different balls that they're playing every week, right? It can change. We gave our thoughts on that first episode on like should there be like a standardization of balls or maybe one ball per surface. But then that creates a little bit of difficulty for all these manufacturers, right? That are trying to get sponsorships and they're trying to, like you said, these 250s become a an avenue for some of the players, right? To and not in just the players in tennis, but the players in ball manufacturer to really showcase their product. So yeah, it's a tough conversation.
I don't know if you've heard, but the ATP Tour's actually made a decision that the spring through the Americas is going to be Dunlop. And
Okay.
so all the terms where we're using the Dunlop ball. And then when you go to Europe, I don't want to say which brand it is because I don't remember, but
Hmm.
like Europe has a different ball. So 3 different ball manufacturers are all official ATP Tour balls, with Dunlop being through the Americas. I think it might be Wilson through Europe. And then I think it was maybe Babolat through the Asia swing. But I could have those brands mixed up, but that was but because of what you just said and that there was an opportunity to try to make sure at least that segment of tournaments the balls are the same.
That's nice. Yeah, I think at the time that we recorded the podcast, we knew that there was some deliberation happening from the ATP, but I don't think it had been like officially released on what was going to be the process of somewhat standardization of the balls. Right. On that topic, as I've been itching to ask you, what are your thoughts on? And I know some players have been like really vocal about this, but it's been for some reason very much top of mind over the past 2 weeks for me. What are your thoughts on like how the balls play now compared to, let's say 10, 20 years ago? Do you see a substantial change and you think that's changing the way professional tennis is played or tennis overall?
I think the ball would be at the bottom of the list. I think that the equipment, I think the strings, I think the surface, and I think the physical nature of the players now have had more to do with it than the ball. The ball may play a little bit of a factor. Some balls sure
Mhm.
might be a little lighter or heavier than another. When you start to see how the U.S. went to a slower, grittier court, so, favoring the baseliner. So now you got these baseline rallies that, favor that style of play more versus than the serve and volleyer. And then the string with the poly strings now that give you more spin. But there's a lot of, I can't use a poly. I mean, me personally, just my arm, I have to use a softer synthetic string. But these pros, they have to use a poly to generate that spin that they need. And then the rackets now are just lighter and stronger. And so I think those are factors that have impacted um, the game than the ball.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, there's so many variables. I think that was one of the points we made first episode. It was like, as much as you want to claim that the ball can create all these differences, in reality, these players and anyone playing tennis has to deal with weather conditions, has to deal with atmospheric pressure, wind. You're talking the surface. You're talking, yeah, like variances in temperature that can create a more lively ball or more debt string set, right? Like there's so many other factors. It just becomes one of the factors you have to deal with when you play tennis, which there are a lot of.
Exactly. Eddie, I'm curious to get your perspective as it relates to the state of the American men and pro tennis. So obviously there's been a lot of momentum that we've seen from the Fritzes of the world in terms of performing well in the Grand Slams, but just falling a little bit short of winning the title. Like, will there be an American man that wins a Grand Slam in the next couple of years?
Well, we've seen it on the women's side again. So I will say, I mean, beyond Venus and Serena, you had Sloane Stevens that came through and won the U.S. Open, and she really should have won the French. She was up a set and a break and lost. That's Simona Halep. Um, and then Coco that came through. Jessica Pegula was, close, and I still think Jessica could win a major. And then don't forget our Atlanta's own Taylor Townsend and what she's done on the doubles side. I mean, that's really remarkable. Just such a talented doubles player and a really good singles player too. And she's left-handed, so I like Taylor.
Yes.
And then Taylor Fritz again came up just short, in last year's U.S. Open final, and we're close. We're close. I mean, Riley Opelka, I thought, really had a shot before he had his injuries because he's 7 foot, and he's sure he's a good mover and a really good ball striker and a great server. And, so he was, and then Tiafoe was showing some, he's so athletic and just such a, competitor. But just getting over that hump, winning 7 matches just shows you how tough it is to win 7 matches, 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
But gosh, we're close. I think Ben now really he's close. He's got the serve. He's got the movement. He's got to work a little bit more on being able to finish the points as a better volleyer and maybe making that forehand a little bit of a bigger weapon. And then, poor Korda has just had some injury issues, but man, so if you're going to ask me in the next 3 or 5 years, are we going to have an American men? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because, we didn't even talk about Mickelson. I mean, Alex is such a good player, and he's got so much upside. And I do think I'm buying. If that's a buy or sell question, I'm buying.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's funny. I think we asked the question to JY earlier in the season, and it said, "Hey, will an American man win by end of 2026?" And he said no. I think obviously that's only a year, right? I think we extend it out a little bit more, like you said, 3 to 5 years. That sounds a little more doable. But yeah, it seems like everyone is close to your point.
There's trajectory there. I think that's what you were getting at, Eddie, is that like you may not see it in 12 months, but you extend it, and there's trajectory for some of these guys to, hone their skills, get a little bit more mature, right, and start acting like they've been there and getting comfortable with those big moments to be able to close out, some of those matches. And like you said, go deep in a tournament and learn to manage that too, the emotions, the pressure, the expectations. So
Well,
much that goes into it.
physical. Again,
Yeah.
7, 3 out of 5. All those guys are sore and achy and just so. Again, I mean, Djokovic at 38 getting to the semifinals of all 4 this past year. That's really
insane.
that should be talked about more because what he did. I mean, that's just
Put that man in a lab.
remarkable. I mean, just remarkable. But things have to go right. I mean, look, Roger Federer only won 1 French Open because he was playing along the same time as Rafa. And so Rafa 1 year lost to Robin Soderling, and that created an opening for Roger to win it. Maybe Sinner gets upset and Alcaraz gets hurt, and then all of a sudden there's a pathway that because you can only win 1 match at a time and you don't have to beat everybody in the draw. You just have to beat the person you're supposed to play in the next match.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw it this past week in Shanghai, right? Sinner loses what? It's like 3rd round or 2nd round. I don't remember exactly. And then like all of a sudden, I mean, the path didn't clear. You still had a Djokovic, you still had a Medvedev, but then these cousins just had a run.
I mean, a guy
So
204
you never
in the
know.
world. 204 in the world wins, his first. So stranger things have happened than an American male winning a Grand Slam.
There you go. We always like to close it off, Eddie, with allowing, and you've obviously already mentioned some of these things throughout the podcast, but what are you currently working on? You mentioned the exhibition. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to in the future? I know you kind of kept it open for the spring, but tell us more about what you're working on, and then where people can find you.
Yeah, when I stepped away from the tournament, my priority was really family and spending as much time with family. And I've got a son who just turned 25, and he's chasing his dream of being a professional baseball player. So he's in Double-A with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So being able to help support him in his dream. I've got a 26-year-old daughter who is chasing her dreams of being a social media influencer, and I encourage you to follow her, Gabulous Gabs, and does tennis and golf and food and fashion. She's actually at a Johnny O photo shoot as we speak, helping promote their new line. But she's again doing some tennis, but mostly golf. But I tell people, if they're coming to me to have me consider something, I'll always listen. And like I said, with the opportunity to be a part of such an iconic venue with Madison Square Garden, bringing tennis back to the Garden that had a great 10-year run pre-COVID, but that was always in March. That was always kind of a one-night exhibition pre-Indian Wells, and so I'm really having fun with that. And who knows where that takes me, but I'll always be passionate about tennis. And one thing that I hope you'll talk about on a future episode is just the health benefits of tennis. And the USTA has been really pushing the medical side that if you play tennis, if a doctor told you that if you took a pill and you would live 9.7 years longer, you would take that pill. Well, that's what the medical community talks about racket sports, and people that play tennis live 9.7 years longer.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be told more.
Wow.
We do have an obese society, and schools have lost physical education in the schools, and so I would like to see that be a big focus and help people play tennis at all ages. But other than that, my focus is spending time with family, enjoying.
We'll take you up on that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, we look forward to that, and that's what we said, right? It's we want to focus on not just the professional tour with this podcast, but we want to bring this to highlight the community, highlight the tennis as a lifestyle as well, and what are the benefits that it brings. Sometimes not emotionally, it can be stressful, but definitely physically, mentally, socially. There's a lot of different things that are aspects that bring that 9.7 years. To the table, right? There's a lot of aspects in tennis, not just physically, but the social aspect of tennis. The fact that, this podcast was only made possible because Gerard and I met playing tennis together. The friendships that you can forge over time, the community that I now have in the Atlanta area because of tennis. A lot of the friendships that I have in this here started with me just showing up to a tennis center and just going to these clinics and just showing up, right? So crazy how that can lead into so many different opportunities and so many different connections in life. I think you're a testament of that. So with that, Eddie, thanks for being part of this episode of the podcast. We look forward to your journey. Hopefully we can be part of that event in Madison Square Garden, and we wish you success for the future with everything you go forward with, okay?
Ditto to you guys. Thanks for having me, and I know you two have a bright future. You're a great-looking doubles team together.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Eddie.
Take care.